I think it's a lot of like planning as well as just you have to take action too. Like you can't just, like say you're going to go travel, but then it's like, oh, it's never the right time or whatever, because it's never going to be the right time. So you just have to take the plunge.
Welcome to Proudly Asian, a podcast series that tells bold and proud stories of Asians by Asians. My name is Isabel, your podcast host, and I'm here to find stories that challenge biases we face every day. There's never just one way to look at Asians. This podcast will take you through a deep dive into the life stories, struggles, and triumphs of young Asians around the world. On today's episode, we have Sharon Tsueng, a Chinese-American financial influencer who is also the co-founder of Good Sweet Homes, an online platform with a mission to help people create generational wealth through real estate. Sharon joins us to talk about the concept of financial freedom, savvy money management tips, and common misconceptions about investing. Welcome back to Proudly Asian. Now, for the month of November, we'll be talking to smart Asians or Asians who have smart personal finance tips from around the world about how you can also get money smart. Of course, these are not going to be investment advice and we won't be doing stock picking. Rather, we are tapping the collective money wisdom of our guests to hopefully prepare you for some specific money situations or unexpected events in life. Now, without further ado, I'm so glad to be kicking off this series with Sharon, who is an accomplished financial influencer and YouTuber herself. Sharon, thank you so much for joining us on Proudly Asian. It's so nice to finally meet you.
Yeah, so nice to meet you. Thanks for having me here.
And just out of curiosity, where are you joining us from today? Because we know that you've been traveling quite a bit lately.
Yeah, I'm actually in Dallas right now. So I moved from the Bay Area, California to Dallas last year. And I'm actually planning to digital nomad for another year, I think, next month. So around Asia, pretty much, yeah.
Wow. So where do you plan on going in Asia?
Yeah, so we're doing a language immersion program to get better at Chinese. So that's going to be from December to February in Taipei. So after that, I think I'm going to keep hopping around, maybe Hong Kong, and maybe we can meet up.
Yeah, let me know. Let me know whenever you're in Hong Kong. Now, before we talk about all things money matters, for our listeners to know a little bit more about you, why don't we start with the basics? Could you tell us about your background? Who are you? What are you? And where did you grow up, Sharon?
Yeah, definitely. So I am a real estate investor and content creator. I'm basically on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, and I teach people how to become financially free. So I talk a lot about side hustles, personal finance, and real estate. I was actually born in Hong Kong and I moved to the Bay Area when I was about 2 years old, now in Dallas, as you know. So yeah, that's basically a bit about me.
Wow, it's been quite a journey. And we know that before you started this whole YouTube channel and content creation career, you also had a few jobs. And also in 2016, you decided to quit your job, travel the world for 2 years. So I'm just wondering how it all led to this point where you are financially free and also became a full-time content creator.
Yeah, I mean, it's a pretty long story. Like basically back in 2014, I did this like solo Europe trip for 1 month and it inspired me and opened my eyes to all the life I was missing out on. I had been living in the Bay Area for so long and I realized like I didn't want to be stuck in a 9 to 5 the rest of my life till I'm like 65, not really truly fully living life. And I didn't want to like travel, spend all my money and then come back and then do the same thing over and again. So I was trying to figure out how to build passive income and become financially free. So I actually like booked a ticket 6 months out, like a one-way ticket to Stockholm. And I was like, all right, I'm going to figure this out. And I started studying a lot about like passive income side hustles, real estate investing, and actually took like 2 part-time remote positions while working full-time. And then I basically took the plunge, quit my job. The job became like a part-time remote position. So I had like 3 part-time remote positions while I was working on building up passive income streams. They were like Etsy, merch by Amazon, Amazon FBA, blogging, like you name it, like all different ways to make money. And then after 2 years, I was able to like basically be able to support myself traveling without the part-time remote positions because I had built up the passive income streams. And then in 2018, I came back, took a job in marketing because I wanted a bit of stability at the time, and just wanted to be at home with my my family and friends. And that's when I was like, let me start doing video and like teach people about what I've learned. So I was like documenting how I was making money through these different side hustles, and then started teaching about personal finance. And it just kind of led to like building up this brand and becoming a content creator. I started also investing heavily in real estate. And I think now been able to basically retire from the 9 to 5 world and just kind of live life while also helping people with my content.
Wow. It sounds like a dream life to a lot of people, like being able to just not be in the daily grind. But I would like to follow up on, the whole decision making process for you, like quitting your 9 to 5. And I mean, obviously, you just mentioned you have lined up some remote jobs. So you were able to financially support yourself during those time that you were traveling, right? But I'm
Mm-hmm.
wondering if you have any like practical tips or like personal learnings to share with our listeners who might be thinking about quitting their jobs and how they can really figure out the financial part.
Yeah, definitely. I think at that time I was like building up actually 2 years worth of living expenses, like making sure I'd be okay, as well as taking those part-time remote positions to kind of like transition to passive income side hustles like full time. So I wasn't just like going after it without like thinking about it. I was definitely planning ahead a lot and building up my finances, trying to boost my income. So taking those part-time remote positions helped increase my salary a lot, which helped me like build my net worth a lot, as well as allowing me to transition more easily to focusing on passive income side hustles. So I think it's a lot of like planning, as well as just you have to take action too. Like you can't just, like say you're going to go travel, but then it's like, oh, it's never the right time or whatever, because it's never going to be the right time. So you just have to take the plunge.
Amazing. So it's all about that leap of faith. But I'm wondering if you could also tell us more about your personal money philosophy, like the fact that you quit your 9 to 5. Was that kind of like in conflict with what you believed back then? Can you tell us more about that?
Yeah. Well, I would say I think it's about growing with small, consistent steps over time. That's like kind of my philosophy. I also think that like it's not about just working for money for the rest of your life. Like you have to enjoy your life. So for me, like with financial freedom, it's about creating a life that you are like proud to live and that you are like truly being yourself. So I think that's kind of my philosophy. It's like twofold. Like first off, I'm not that flashy person who's like high risk, high reward, like just go all in on something and hope it works out. I'm very like, let me consistently save and invest in a diverse portfolio of like index funds and real estate, and build up my side hustles. To me, like when I left, it was actually kind of like a good financial decision in my opinion, because like I'm building something versus just constantly like working for someone else. As well as like in the Bay Area, it's actually, very expensive. But then like traveling, I was only spending like $1,400 a month. So it's like, it was actually like pretty financially savvy in my opinion. So
Yeah, wow. Wow. I feel like you probably have to do a course about how to like become a savvy budget traveler as well.
yeah.
And I know just backtracking a little bit because we talked about the concept of financial freedom, right? But for those who might not be completely understanding of what this concept really means, what it could look like, could you explain to us what financial freedom really means and what that looks like?
Yeah, definitely. So I think it's basically the freedom to live a life that you want to live because you've built like a solid net worth, you've created passive income that covers your lifestyle. And I think in order to achieve it, you have to increase your income. And you can do that by, for me, I was actually job hopping a lot. So I would like leave to another job like every couple years, and that actually increased my salary a lot faster. That was one part of it, as well as like building these side income streams. So having multiple income streams, it allows you to have peace of mind, like in case anything happens, but also that helps you build your income faster. And then investing that money, so you make your money work for you. You're investing in assets that appreciate over time or like give you cash flow. And then also, I would say you should make sure you have that sizable net worth, like that covers unexpected emergencies or anything like that. So I would say that's kind of like how you achieve financial freedom.
I know that you have also built quite a online community. So what are some of the most common money related questions that you would get from your online community?
Yeah, honestly, like I think most of it is about side hustles in real estate. So, how do I start a side hustle? Like, which one's the best one to start? And like, because I've done so many different ones and they actually each like made money if I spent a lot of consistent time into it, I would say that basically like everything can work. You just have to figure out which one matches you. So, I always say, like, figuring out how much time capital you have, as well as like what your strengths are and what your passions are, and then figuring out what matches you. So for example, if you don't have that much capital, like maybe merch by Amazon or selling digital products on Etsy might work. Like those don't require that much capital. And also if you are into like writing or video, maybe that's like blogging or YouTube. So it's like kind of figuring out what path makes sense for who you are. And then the other question is like how to buy your first rental property. So there's a lot of steps to that, right? You need to determine your target market. You need to save for a down payment. You have to find the right team to work with. So I kind of try to break down all the different steps for people with my content and things like that. But yeah, mainly the questions are usually around those two topics.
I see. And have you had maybe any questions or even misconceptions that people normally would have about money, investing, or even investing in real estate?
Yeah, I think a lot of people think investing is only for wealthy people. But I think investing is for everyone because you can invest like a couple $100s a month in an index fund or an ETF, and over like 20, 30 years time, that can increase to hundreds of thousands of dollars, right? And even if you don't have a couple hundreds a month to put into investing, you can invest whatever you can, right, into it and do that on a consistent basis. But you have to like consistently put in that work in order to change your financial situation. So I think that's the thing. Like a lot of people think it just comes from your family or whatever, but you could be passed down a bunch of money and like not know what to do with it and like lose all of it. And that's a lot of what lottery winners do, right? They lose, like they go bankrupt. So it's like really important to have good financial foundation. Yeah.
When it comes to like investing, right? I think a lot of people would tend to think, oh, I don't have $100,000 yet, so I'm never going to be able to pull the trigger. But the thing is, like you mentioned, you don't need $100,000.
Yeah.
Like you can just start with even $20 per month,
Yeah,
and
exactly.
over time it becomes something, right? And
Mm-hmm.
and even growing that habit into maybe like paying yourself first every month, even
Exactly.
if it's a very little amount, it can mean something over time. But we talked a little bit about like that whole life of living outside of a 9 to 5 job or even becoming a digital nomad. I want to get into the specifics, like, is this lifestyle, in your opinion, for everyone? And for those who might be thinking about, taking that leap of faith, trying out becoming like a freelancer, digital nomad, what are some of the maybe like real considerations they need to go through, both maybe mentally or financially?
Yeah. I don't think it's for everyone. Like, there's a lot of people who are happy with working a 9 to 5, being in the office, or just like staying at home. Even like my husband is like more of a homebody. Like, he's not really like as much as adventurous as me. Like, I'm glad that he's down to like do the things that I want to do. But it's like, some people are just more, happy at home, and that's totally fine. I think I just kind of give this information in case people do want like an alternate lifestyle. But I think that also it helps you no matter what. Like, it's always good to build your financial foundations, right? And in terms of like actually like exploring this path financially, like I mentioned, save, invest, build multiple income streams. I would just make sure you have a plan like going forward, and you're not just doing it like with no backup. I've actually met people who like go to Chiang Mai with $500 in their pocket and just hoping that like it'll work out. Like, I've met those people, and I'm like, it's scary. Like, maybe that works for you, but I think like I recommend like really preparing for before you take that leap. I think I don't know, mentally, I think like it's not common, right? So like for me, there weren't many people doing it around me. Like, I didn't know anyone who was doing it. And my parents were even like crying when they like found out that I was serious about doing this. And they're like, why can't you just stay at home? Like, it's not safe for a girl. It's like, it's scary. Like, why are you doing all this? For me, it's kind of like, I would rather do this than live a life of regret. So, I would rather take that plunge and just see, like, if it's not for me, then I'll just come back. But like, I wouldn't know if I didn't try. So I think that's like a good mindset to have of like, what do you want your ideal life to be? And like, what steps are you taking to get there?
Like it's always that whole like fear factors that stops people from taking that leap of faith. But a lot of them would be like, okay, I'm ready to take that leap of faith and I can't change anything anymore from this point onwards. But then I think that's also one of the biggest misconceptions, because at any point in your life, it's never too late to make changes. I really love how you mentioned, if it doesn't work, you can always go home, you can always go back to your old life, but just don't carry that regret of wondering like, oh, what could have happened if you have done something that you wanted to do. So that's a very profound piece of advice that our listeners should like bear in mind. And going back to a little bit more on the investment and money side of things, no matter which method people choose to build their wealth, whether or not it's like side hustles, investing in rental properties, especially this applies to real estate. They do need some sort of capital to really like make money. So what would your advice be for people who would like to build that initial capital? Because I know we mentioned, maybe every month, $20, $200, it could make a difference. But for those who are really have their mind set on, let's say, rental properties or real estate, how can they really make that step towards what they want to do?
Yeah. So definitely like with real estate, it is good to have like, maybe multiple 5 figures, 6 figures to invest. And you do need to build up your savings. And I would say that, I do mention like different side hustles that don't require like a bunch of money, right? So I mentioned like digital downloads on Etsy, selling like apparel merch by Amazon, where you upload a design and Amazon actually prints and fulfills your orders for you whenever you get sales of that design on a shirt. So it's like, there's ways to make money without having like capital, and that actually can cash flow really well if you continue to get sales. So it's like, having multiple income streams like that. But also, I think if you're just starting out and you want capital fast, I think freelancing is a great way to go. Like in marketing, graphic design, or sales, like going on Fiverr, even putting a gig up. Like, I know someone who makes like multiple 6 figures on Fiverr, just like copywriting for people. So it's like you don't think you can make that much money on that site, but you can actually like do really well on platforms like this. So like looking into Fiverr and Upwork, but also like I mentioned, job hopping is a great way to build your income. But I don't recommend it for like people who love their job and they want to stay in it. And I also don't recommend just like quitting and then not having a backup plan. Like you should know where you would go next before like you leave your job. Um, but it's like for me it was great to like increase my income, but also I would try to cut your expenses. So it's like I think a lot of people focus on like little things like $5 coffees and stuff like that maybe they can cut out in their lives, but also I would try to focus first on like your largest expenses. So can you downsize with your housing, or can you like sell your car and get a used one, all cash or something like that? Just figuring out how to lower those monthly expenses and then increasing the income can really boost your savings a lot so that you can invest in real estate. There are also like ways where you can creatively finance in order to invest in real estate with like $0. But I would also say that's a bit risky, especially for a beginner. So I would probably start with like getting your first rental, like the more conventional way, and just like building up your finances first instead of like over leveraging and having too much debt. Right. So, yeah, so I would definitely like, I guess for me, like the more risk averse way, like I like to do those small, consistent steps to grow my wealth.
I really love how you definitely integrated that whole risk factor in every step or every suggestion that you have for your communities, because like it also keeps them realistic, because like you're not just there being like, oh, you can do it, just do it. But then you're kind of like, okay, like let's bear in mind these are the risks that you will be facing when no matter which option you go for. But since we mentioned a little bit on rental properties, and I also know that it's one of the main investments in your current portfolios. Maybe the number has grown by now, but you currently own 34 and counting rental units in the States alone. And you also are running online courses about like how people can really do it. I'm wondering, for those who are really looking into this whole like rental property asset class, what would it take for them to be able to invest in their first rental property? Do they have to maybe first own a home that they live in before they do that? Or, is that not really part of the consideration?
Yeah, you don't have to own a home before you invest. I mean, one of the paths is house hacking if you really wanted to, and I think that is a great way to get into real estate. So that's basically like buying a home and renting out rooms to roommates, so it like covers your mortgage and possibly even lets you cash flow. The other way is buying like a 2 to 4 unit property, like duplex, triplex, fourplex, and then renting out those units and then making up for your expenses. That is definitely like a great way to get into real estate. In terms of like steps, well, first you should kind of research your target market. You want to make sure you're looking for a market that is appreciating in value. So maybe you're looking at stuff like job growth, population growth, income growth, less crime. So you want to look at different data points in order to find a market that you think has appreciation potential. And then you want to save for the down payment. I mentioned a lot of ways to do that. Usually it's 20% for conventional loan, and as well as closing costs. And then you want to find an agent to work with, as well as like contact property managers if you want to work with a property management company. So for me, like I like working with property management companies because I don't want to actively manage tenants myself. Like it just makes my life a whole lot easier. Property managers usually cost like 8 to 10% of the rents per month. So I think it's worth it for my peace of mind. Like, I don't want to have to work all the time. Right. So there's that. So you want to build your team. So once you have that, you want to get a pre-approval letter. So when you are buying a property, you want to be basically like showing the seller that you are approved for a loan, like if you were to buy the property. So it shows you're serious with your offers. And then you also want to practice like analyzing deals over and over again. So you don't want to buy a property that will negatively cash flow, right? Like you want to make sure you're buying something that will generate cash flow and appreciate over time. They call it alligator properties. So like make sure you're not buying something that you didn't calculate, like the amount it costs for repairs or for, insurance, property taxes. There's like different expenses to account for. So you want to make sure you're doing your due diligence and like making sure you're running those numbers. And then after that, you're putting in your offer, you're signing your docs and closing escrow. And then you would work with your property management company to manage the property and get tenants. So that's basically like the flow of buying your first property.
I mean, obviously, the workflow and suggestion that you just mentioned are more geared towards the US market. I'm wondering, in the current macroeconomic environment, the characteristics are low growth, high inflation, and people are finding it very hard to invest in the US housing market. I'm wondering if you have looked into maybe even international markets, in markets that are a little bit more affordable, and the workflow or the whole mindset that you just mentioned, can it also be applied in markets that are outside the US?
So I haven't invested internationally, but it's actually one of like my goals to be able to buy property, especially because I travel so much. I think that I would love to have like multiple home bases and be able to like go to the different ones and maybe like short-term rental them out. But I think that, for example, like I looked into Lisbon, and actually like the cash flow was better in the US than Lisbon. And there are different rules and regulations for each city and country. So I haven't attempted those things, but like I would love to do it. Another one I have been looking into is like in Japan, there are really cheap properties, but those properties are usually depreciating. So they're not really good financial investments, but it's like they're like more of like a personal thing. Like if you wanted to just go there and visit a lot, because I'm like, you can literally buy stuff under 10,000 apparently. So it's like insane. But like, yeah, they're not going to like increase in value apparently, because the population is decreasing over there. So there's definitely like a lot of layers to look into, like not just the numbers, but also the rules and regulations of each place. But I hope that I'm going to be able to do that in the future.
I know. Maybe when you're in Asia, you next time we talk, you will tell me that, oh, you have already made some investments in Asia, and we need to do an update episode on like specifically the Asia markets. You never know, because I think right now Bali is a really hot market, but like many people would like to own a villa or run a villa there. But that's exactly like why it's a popular market. So I guess it really boosts the housing prices in the island currently. So I guess definitely there are a lot of like amazing markets around Asia that people can look into. But now, before we move on to the next segment, I just have one more question for you, Sharon. In different Asian cultures and values, there are some belief systems, shared values, such as respect your elder, family first, right? Do you have any culturally relevant money management tips for our listeners that factor in these cultural nuances? Because for some of our listeners who grew up in an Asian family, maybe they might feel a bit pressured to maybe support their entire families. Anything that they earn from their 9 to 5, they would have to contribute to the family, and it becomes a lot harder for them to make any moves such as investing or even like doing passive income because they're too busy. Do you have any maybe practical tips to share?
Yeah, I mean, when you're talking about that example, I actually feel like a lot of like Asian cultures, it's like you live with your parents till you're like late 30s or something, like I don't know, like it's like
True.
so my parents actually wanted me to stay at home like for as long as they could. And when I was gonna move out, they were like, what? Like they felt hurt, you know what I mean? Like they didn't want me to leave. And actually that helped a lot with my finances, right? Because I'm not like spending a ton on rent in the city or something like that. And I still like what you mentioned, I do like send money to my parents like every month, but they don't like want me to actually, but like, yeah, like I just want to. And I think that like for me, I like the being able to take care of my family, and it's like kind of both ways. Like with my family, it's really like what's yours is mine, what's mine is yours type of vibe. So we kind of like share, and like I don't feel I don't know, it just feels good for me. So I actually think that like when it comes to building generational wealth, like I think passing down those personal finance foundations is more important, because when you're teaching your kids like how to manage your money, that's just way more important, because like I mentioned, if you pass down a bunch of money and they don't know what to do with it, they could lose it. So it's like it's important to pass down those fundamentals. Another thing is I'm actually really grateful that my parents instilled like good money habits, because they taught me to save a lot. And I think that's very part of Asian culture that, my parents didn't have that much growing up, and they had to work for everything. And it's like, I think a lot of Asian culture, it's like that mentality to save. I also think that there's got to be a balance too, because like as you're growing wealth, if you are constantly like, I need to save every single thing, I can't spend on anything, you end up developing like a scarcity mindset. So I do think like we have to feel abundant in order to like attract wealth and truly live life. So I think it's important to like invest in ourselves and invest in our businesses, like not be afraid of that, as well as like invest in just like personal enjoyment, like being able to enjoy the things that you truly value. I don't know if I've answered your question very well, but like I was just thinking of the different things that come to mind when it comes to like Asian culture and how I was raised and how like that affected how I manage my money.
Yeah, I appreciate that, because we both know that growing up in Asian families could be a very complex experience. So it's different for everyone, and everyone has very different circumstances. But then those are some really kind of like practical tips to think about. Like if you have the privilege to live with your parents, then essentially you're living kind of like a rent-free life, and it contributes to your personal savings. And if you're sending money to your families, perhaps you're also keeping that wealth within the family. Eventually that could be passed down back to you as well. So yeah, those are really good takeaways. But now it's time for us to move on to the next segment, which is called Rapid Fires. And in this segment, I'll be asking my guests biased questions that they've got asked at some points in life. And in Sharon's case, it will be common misconceptions people have about investing and personal finances. So Sharon, are you ready to answer all the questions?
Yes.
All right, let's go. First question. I will never be able to afford a house.
Yeah, so I guess this is a common, I think, money misconception. I think that, like I mentioned, consistent steps will allow you to get there. Reduce your expenses, increase your income, save a lot, put that into your investments.
And next one. You can only get rich through luck.
Yeah, so, I mean, with like, again, lottery winners and like people who, get a bunch of money, like, that doesn't mean they're going to keep it, right? So there's a bunch of stats that support this. And some of the like richest people are like, I think there was like the top 5 professions or something of like it was like teachers actually was on the list for like the top 5 in terms of like wealth. So it was like, I think it was like for millionaires. So it's like, that means, it's not about luck. It's about like being smart with your finances. You just have to put in that consistent work, like I mentioned.
The next question is, debt is always bad.
Yeah, so I think there's good debt and bad debt. So there is debt that, high interest rates, credit card debt, like that can really make it super hard to build wealth. Whereas like when it comes to real estate investing, you have to take on debt, but it can be good debt because you're using that leverage in order to make money work for you. You pay, instead of 100%, you pay 20% of the down payment and you're borrowing 80%. Yeah, that seems bad, but then if your cash flow, like if your rental income is making for your expenses and cash flowing for you, that means like that is good debt. It's making money work for you. So debt isn't always bad.
That's a really good way to look at debts. And the next one, credit cards are bad.
I would say like credit cards actually help you build your credit score, and it can actually get you a lot of like points and rewards if you do it responsibly, but you have to do it responsibly. Like you have to pay off your bills on time, or else you get into that credit card debt, right? So I think a lot of people avoid credit cards because they're worried about interest and all that stuff. But in reality, if you're auto paying and like you have it on, you're responsible with it, organized with it, you can actually get a high credit score with it. You can go to trips for free. Like it pays for a lot of my travels because I do I get a lot of points for my spending, right? So you just have to be smart with it.
Amazing. And finally, I don't need an emergency fund.
Yeah, so you never know what's going to happen, right? Like medical emergencies, or your car breaks down, your roof, something. So this always happens in life. And I think that people have to be prepared. Like they can feel like the victim, like, oh, this happened to me and like whatever. But like, have you prepared yourself in case of these emergencies? Like things happen to everyone. So you need to build, I would say, a 6 months worth of expenses for your emergency fund.
Nice. Thank you so much, Sharon, for answering all the rapid bias questions in this segment. Now, to wrap up the episode, Sharon, for those who would like to follow your work, where can they find you? And let us know if you have any exciting plans you have for your platform, Good Sweet Homes.
Yeah, so you can find me at Sharon Tsueng. So my last name is Tseung. You can find that on TikTok, Instagram, YouTube, and then goodsweethomes.com that has my courses. Right now, we basically just have Remote Rental Riches, Rental Ready Finances, which is about helping you with buying your first home. We also have Etsy Entrepreneur and Blog Launch Profit for people who are more interested in side hustles. Right now, currently not working on another course right now, but in the future, I will let you guys know.
Amazing. Yeah. Watch this space, everyone. And Sharon, finally, one last question that we ask every single guest of ours on Proudly Asian. What does it mean to be proudly Asian American to you?
So I think it means, for me, like being proud of my roots, but also kind of finding my own self-identity. So my parents sacrificed a lot for me, came here to give me a better life, and I feel proud to honor my family and honor Asian traditions. But I also think it's finding your own self, because like as an American, they really emphasize like freedom, like independence, being a leader. I think with Chinese culture, it's more about like honoring the family, community. So I think for me, it's really finding my own balance between the two, but also like celebrating my story in my own way.
Amazing. Thank you so much for sharing your personal finances tips with us on Proudly Asian, Sharon.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me.
That's it for this episode of Proudly Asian. Don't forget to follow us on Instagram at proudly.asian for more content. We are on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and YouTube. Leave us a 5-star review on wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for tuning in and signing off for now. I'm Isabel Wong.